When finally I'm free as I go up on the mountain, waiting for my soul to sing. Amazing grace, the sweetest thing is I go. And then the storm rushing in, and here I am again as I go. Take me up to where I was when I never wanted more than you. Lift me up to feel your touch. It wouldn't be that much for you. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. On the mountain where you took me by the hand, told me dance again, yes I know. Up on the mountain where you took this heart of stone, put life back in these bones, yes I know. Take me up to where I was when I never wanted more than you. Lift me up to feel your touch. It wouldn't be that much for you. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Take me up to where I was when I never wanted more than you. Lift me up, feel your touch. It wouldn't be that much for you. Take me up to where I was when I never wanted more than you. Lift me up to feel your touch. It wouldn't be that much for you. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Amen. You know this morning?
When I was about ready to leave for college, a long time ago, ages ago, the year before I left, my dad lost his job that he had all my life. And so I went away to college. We didn't have a lot of money. There was a lot of, I ran out of money on my food card, and so they sent me ramen noodles in a box. And I don't look back on it with bad times. It was what it was. You weren't allowed to have microwaves and all that stuff, so you had a little hot pot that you plugged into the wall, and you could boil noodles. And so probably 3 times a week, that's what I had. Often, where I'd follow people around that looked like they still had money left on their food card. And I would see if they could buy me lunch. I made it through, but the weird thing was, I left for college, and then the first time I came home was Thanksgiving. And in the process of me leaving for college and getting to Thanksgiving, they had sold their house so that they could save money, and they had enough money to sell their house, and they bought a trailer in a trailer park. And then they only had to pay $107 a month rent to stay in the trailer park. So a pretty sound, wise decision. Well, needless to say, I'm driving back, and I don't know where my home is. I don't know where I'm going. And there was no GPS, there was no print a map on the internet, the World Wide Web was not invented yet. And so it was, give me some directions, give me a map, and I have to find my way home. It all worked out good, and I got there, and it's kind of funny. This isn't a poo-poo part. I kind of remember finally of the funny things that happened. So there wasn't enough room in the trailer for an extra person. So there was this little narrow room about this wide where the washer and dryer was, and they put a little bed beside the washer and dryer. Now, this was only when I was home from college, of course, whatever. But one of the other things about a trailer park is nobody has driveways. So there's a street that's a little extra wide, and there's trailers going up and down both sides, and then all the cars are parked there, and every trailer gets max 2 cars. So luckily, my mom had a car, my dad had a car. Luckily, my grandma lived across the street in the trailer, and she didn't have a car, so I got to park my car over there. My favorite always, ever since I've learned how to drive, because I learned to drive that way, is a stick shift, is a standard car. I just love the feel of having exact power. I can shift when I want to. I can roll up, I can roll back, I can do whatever I want. I just love it. Some people hate it and are nervous. I would prefer it in any time. If you've ever had a car like that, you know there are 3 pedals. There's gas, there's brake, and you get to use your left foot on that clutch. And then sometimes, and then if you're a veteran of it, you know that when you park your car, you still don't have to use the emergency brake. If you put that thing in first gear, you're good, and it'll go. It'll just stay there, and the engine will hold it tight. Except for one time. So we're like 8 trailers up on the road. I come back, go past the cars, pull in my little spot, sit here, and I'm pretty sure that like I was doing something. So I didn't turn the car off yet, so I put the stick shift in neutral, so I'm sitting there, so I don't have to hold the clutch in the whole time. Yeah, you see where this is going. Put it in neutral, I'm like, I'm gonna do my stuff, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Turn the car off, get out of the car. Well, of course it was in neutral, it wasn't in first. So I walk across the street, shut the door, start walking across the street, and then I hear something. And here is my car rolling backwards down the slight hill in the trailer park, next to all these parked cars, next to everything. I did what you're not supposed to do. I chased my car, because usually that's more dangerous than whatever's going to happen with your car. I chased the car, I'm trying to open the door. Let me tell you, probably some 200 feet away, my car came to stop in the field, having not hit one single car. A miracle in itself. An absolute miracle. I don't know how, because I had to pull over in here to park my car. And somehow it didn't go to that side, and go to that side, and roll with me trying to open the door the whole time running along, and finally it gets to the field and it stops, and I'm like, oh, now the door opens, it's nice. Was it my fault? I don't know. It happens. Life happens. I will tell you this. It's never happened again. Once was enough. Barely escaping. I mean, I'm just imagining it could have sideswiped probably 10 cars on the way by, and it didn't hit one. It just didn't. Did I willfully park my car and be like, I'm going to push this through and see how many cars I can hit? No. But it was a mistake. There are things in life that happens that way too. Sometimes we go out to do bad things, let's just admit it. Sometimes we're like, I'm a little ornery today, I'm going to do bad things. Other times, we kind of don't know what we're doing. You guys familiar with the term speed trap? You're driving a car. This is the speed limit. You're going the speed limit. You may or may not be going the speed limit, but let's just say you are. Let's say you have no intention of speeding today, no matter how much of a hurry you're in. And the way the speed trap goes is the cop hides right after where the speed limit changes from this high down to this high. So that you're not paying attention, and all of a sudden the speed limit's 10 miles per hour less, and you're going the speed you were going, and then they can pull you over and say you were speeding. Now, did you have ill intent that day? Did you go out and say, I'm gonna drive a little fast, I want to drive? No. Did you still break the law? Yes. You can say all you want. Well, I was going to speed and I wasn't paying attention and I didn't know, and now, and he already knows. That's why he's sitting there. It's the way to get some money. But that's how speed traps work. So in that instance, because you hear this phrase used a lot, but in different ways, depending on whether you need it or not. In that instance, the cop can say, ignorance is no excuse. Technically, you broke the law, right? Ignorance is no excuse. Life just happens. Sometimes you're going the speed, and it works, and then sometimes you're being pulled over. Some things you can control. There's a good chance a lot of us were speeding before the speed limit went down. You can control that part. Some things you can't control. The fact that you didn't notice that the speed changed. But life is just all of it. That's just life. Can't control, you got everything in the middle, you weren't paying attention, you were paying attention, but you did it on purpose, all those things. That's life. And we're going to get in situations, so what can we do? What can we do about life, about this over here, and everything in between? There's a guy in the Bible, because we're doing Voices from the Past, named Solomon. He is a fascinating study. You'll hear about King Solomon. You've probably heard about maybe King Solomon's mines where his treasure is buried. You might hear about his wisdom. There's lots of things you might hear about Solomon. And we're not talking about Forrest and Louise. We're talking about the guy in the Bible. And so I'm going to read a little bit of it in 1 Kings. And that's what I'm going to be reading from. If you want to follow along, you can. There's little excerpts because we don't have time to read about Solomon's whole life because there's a lot of stuff, a lot of interesting things. I'm not going to cover some of the things today. I encourage you to go back and read in between where we read and about all the other stuff because there's so many great stories about Solomon that I can never make up. You know how you like to think you can make up some stories and they'd be funny or whatever? You cannot make this stuff up. So here in 1 Kings, I start in 3 through 14. Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of his father David. Only he sacrificed and offered incense at the high places. The king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the principal high place. Solomon used to offer 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I should give you." Boy, would I like that if God spoke to me in a dream and said, "Ask what I would give you." Anything. And Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant, my father David, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and the uprightness of heart towards you. And you have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne today. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David. Although I am only a little child, and I do not know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of the people whom you have chosen, a great people, so numerous they cannot be numbered or counted. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, able to discern between good and evil, for who can govern this your great people?" It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this. God said to him, "Because you have asked for this, and have not asked for yourself for long life, or riches, or for the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, I now do according to your word. Indeed, I give you a wise and discerning mind. No one like you has been before, and no one like you shall arise after you. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor all your life. No other king shall compare with you. If you will walk in my ways, keep my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your life as well." Starting at 16. Did I put 16 on there? Yes. I read it all a bunch of times. I didn't know what I was putting in. I can't make this stuff up, I'm telling you. Later, 2 women who were prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. The one woman said, "Please, my lord, this woman and I live in the same house. I gave birth while she was in the house. Then on the 3rd day after I gave birth, this woman also gave birth. We were together, there was no one else with us in the house. Only the 2 of us were in the house. Then this woman's son died in the night because she accidentally lay on him. She got up in the middle of the night and took my son from beside me while your servant slept. She laid him at her breast and laid her dead son at my breast. When I arose in the morning to nurse my son, I saw that he was dead. But when I looked at him closely in the morning, clearly it was not the son I had borne. But the other woman said, no, the living son is mine, and the dead son is yours. The first said, no, the dead son is yours, and the living son is mine. So they argued back and forth before the king. Then the king, Solomon, said, the one says, this is my son that is alive, this is your son that's dead, while the other says, not so, your son is dead and my son is alive. We've gone over that. So the king said, bring me a sword. Okay, I don't really know where this is going. He said, bring me a sword. My first thought, having known the Bible, is, you ladies are ridiculous. I'm going to kill you both. That's my thought. Because they're kings and they do whatever they want. But no, they brought him a sword, and the king said, divide the living boy in two. Give half to the one and half to the other. I can't make that up. Give half to the one and half to the other. Whew. But the woman whose son was alive, the one whose actually her son was alive, said to the king, because of compassion for her own son, please, my lord, give her the living boy. Certainly do not kill him. The other said, I can't make this up. It shall neither be mine nor yours. Divide it. Then the king responded, give the first one the living boy. Do not kill him. She is the mother. All Israel heard of the judgment that the king had rendered. And they stood in awe of the king, because they had perceived that the wisdom of God was in him to execute justice. If you bring me a problem like that, that's not how I would come up with solve it. I can't do that. I couldn't make that up. That's a good story. It's weird. That's a good story. That's life happening. That's the wisdom of God working through it. There's other stuff in here that talks about all the wisdom he gave him and how many things he wrote. He wrote 3,000 proverbs and all this stuff. But I'm going to continue on in chapter 11. Just a little to end the story. King Solomon loved many foreign women, along with the daughter of Pharaoh, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, then Hittite women. From the nations concerning which the Lord had said to the Israelites, you shall not enter into marriage with them, neither shall they with you, for they will surely incline your heart to follow their gods. Solomon clung to these in love. Among his wives were 700 princesses and 300 concubines. And his wives turned away his heart. For when Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not true to the Lord his God, as was the heart of his father David. Whoa. We'll talk about that in a minute. There's a lot to unpack there. In verse 9, then the Lord was angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice and had commanded him concerning this matter, that he should not follow other gods. But he did not observe what the Lord commanded. Therefore the Lord said to Solomon, since this has been your mind, and you have not kept my covenant and my statutes that I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom from you and give it to your servant. Do a quick little summary here. Quick little summary. Solomon is one of King David's sons. King David's at the end of his life, and so God has appointed Solomon that he's going to be king in this place. So he's taken over for Dad, okay? He's taken over the kingdom for Dad. Says he loves the Lord, he seeks him diligently, talks about how much he does sacrifices and does altar. He even points out, because this is what I love about the Bible, that he's not perfect. Says he loves the Lord and his heart seeks after the Lord, but he still did some kind of bad things and burnt incense in places that he wasn't supposed to. But he thought he was doing right and seeking the Lord. Because he seeks him all the time, God says, I want you to rule right. I'm offering you a gift. Anything you want. Anything you want. A blank check from God. And of course, at that time, humble Solomon asked for the right gift. He doesn't ask for riches, for glory, for honor, for the life of his enemies. He asks for wisdom to rule God's people. And of course, God loves that. So humble Solomon chooses well. I love how it says he's the wisest man ever. He's the wisest man, and only God can say this because we can't predict the future. He says, you are going to be the wisest man that has ever lived to this point, and no one after you is going to achieve what you achieve. Only God can say that. No one else on the history of the planet, all the wise people you think of, is going to be as wise as Solomon, because that's what God said. And it was proven, if you read the stories in between, over and over and over and over again. The Queen of Sheba came and tested him. Israel saw his things. Over and over and over again, he proved that he was the wisest man alive. So then, a cautionary tale. What happens next? He started to read his own press clippings. And he stopped seeking God every day like he used to. Not only did he stop seeking God, he started ignoring the advice and the rules about if you get in with foreign women, they're going to turn your heart away from the one and only God, and you're going to fall. He ignored it. You could say he put himself in harm's way by ignoring the advice. After that, the rest is history. He went like this. Because also in between the lines, God kept saying, as long as you keep your heart after me like your father David did, you will have this, you'll have this, you'll have that. It says it in there, I don't know how many times, 5 or 6 times in all those stories. If you turn away, it's gone. Pretty clear. In this case, after he got all his wives, all his whatever, Solomon chose, we've heard the other part of ignorance. He said ignorance is bliss. I would rather not know what God thinks of these things I'm doing, so I'm not going to ask. I'm going to come over here. Not knowing is what I want. You know what happened after that? He fell. Didn't just affect him. God's kingdom got ripped to shreds. Got put in a bunch of different places because of Solomon. Now, we're talking about voices from the past and stories and about living with these people in the Bible and seeing it in a different way and being able to walk alongside of them, experience what they experience, and maybe ask them some questions. So, I put it this way. Let's walk with Solomon a minute. Let's pretend like I have a friend named Solomon. He's my best friend. And when his dad retires, he's going to take over the business. And one day, much to his chagrin, his dad's like, yep, it's time. You're going to take over. This is my best friend Solomon here. We're both like, no way. I'm not qualified to run a business yet. I'm only 22. No way is that happening. He's like, nope, it is. It is. And so Dad says, okay, you're taking over. What do you need? I'll give you anything. Anything at my disposal. I'm the best friend now. And I'm like, this is great. I don't even have to run a business. And my best friend can get anything he wants. Anything. I can just imagine sitting there. Maybe you should ask for a pool first. Maybe you should ask for this. I don't know. To my surprise, my best friend Solomon, who's not ready to take over, makes a good choice. And I'm thinking, like, maybe he is ready. Did you see what he asked for? He asked for, like, wisdom to run the company. That's great. And then a bunch of weird stuff happened. There's the thing with the 2 others and the kids. Can you imagine seeing that in person? You're sitting there, there's your friend who's not old enough to take over the company, took over the company, and then they bring him this problem. And he's like, give me thy sword that I ordered on Amazon. And I'm like, no, don't do that. And it turns out way better than I could ever imagine. And then the Queen of Sheba visited. I don't know who this is. Maybe it's Taylor Swift. Maybe Taylor Swift heard how wise he is, and she's like, I gotta go check this thing out. And then she gets there and is like, you are wiser than anyone I've ever seen. And if you read the story, the Queen of Sheba gave him a whole bunch of treasures and riches there. amazing. I'm like, my friend has got it going on. And then he gets married. And I'm like, I don't think you're old enough to get married, but okay. And the first marriage was a business deal. Made a deal with Pharaoh for Pharaoh's daughter. I'm like, I don't think your wife should be a business deal, but it's you. You've been wise, make this work. Then another wife. I'm like, I don't think that's a great idea, man. Now, this was not abnormal back then. There were no laws against it yet. Even if there's no law against it, we can all agree in this room, that is not a good idea. The second wife is not a good idea. Like, hey man, I can see kind of your appeal, but I don't think it's a good idea. And then the next wife. And then the next one. And then the next one. You can better be sure if it's my best friend. Each time I'm like, stop it. What are you doing? 700 wives, 300 concubines. I can almost guarantee you what happened after so many. The best friend is saying, stop it. Don't do that. Stop it. Don't do that. That Solomon just starts ignoring that and putting distance between him and me, because how many times you want to hear, stop doing that, you're an idiot. Stop doing that, it's not going to work out. Stop doing that. What are you doing? So my best friend is no longer taking my advice. He's no longer humble. Anybody that thinks that they can handle 1,000 spouses, they're no longer humble. They're no longer waking up on the right side of the bed. They don't have all their cookies in the jar, whatever you want to call it. Something's going on up there. Solomon forgot where his wisdom came from. He started to think it came from him. Solomon forgot where his wisdom came from. That's probably the weirdest story to say you should read this and you should put yourself alongside of them and think of the questions you would ask them, because those are some weird things going on. I can't imagine if that was my best friend. That would be some stories to tell today. You would definitely write a book, for sure. That's life. That's what happened then, and we have our life. What happens when life happens? Well, I want to tell you about something. So, there's different definitions for sin. If you do the one where it's a bow and arrow, sin means you missed the bullseye. It means you're not perfect, you missed the mark. Well, us Wesleyans, our denomination, for one reason or another, and you don't have to buy into it or not buy into it, we came up with this different thing because we realized, like, you get caught on the speed track, that sometimes life happens, right? So, while other people are like, it's just not being perfect, Wesleyans came up with our definition of sin, which is a willful transgression of a known law. You see where I'm going here? And they call the other thing that you might do a mistake. It's a transgression of an unknown law, or it's just a failure not to sin. I know that's a lot of words, but that's just like the traffic example. You can decide that you saw the speed limit change and you're just going to go faster anyway. That's called a willful transgression of a known law. You can make a mistake by saying, I had no idea that it changed. I didn't want to speed, but I did. And that's called a mistake. Now, we're not idiots. Wesleyans still say that technically they're both sins in the eyes of God and that you need the blood of Jesus to cover your sins. We're not saying, well, this is a mistake, so it doesn't count. We're just saying it is different if you willfully decide to pursue this and that if it's a mistake. I just call it life. Sometimes we want to do good and we don't do good. So I made up this thing called Scenarios for Sinning. I know, don't write a book with that title. Nobody's going to buy it. There's one scenario where we sin, where we know better, but we choose to do it anyway. You would call that a stupid act. We know better, but we do it. The next scenario is we don't know any better, so we choose wrong because we didn't know. And then the third one is we know better, and we try our best to not sin, but we know sometimes it happens anyway because we're not perfect. And so the result is still wrong. It doesn't matter if you call it a mistake, a sin, or whatever. Those are the different parts of life. So then I asked a question, and this is this is how we're going to end today. The question is that we got these scenarios, and they all happen because it's all life. What can we control? What did we learn from my best friend Solomon that we can control? And real quick here, one, learn as much as you can. The more you know, the less you're likely to accidentally fall into sin. Does that make sense? We can control learning as much as we can so that we know what's wrong and we know what's right and we know what circumstances to avoid. Number two, then we can avoid potential situations like deciding you need 1,000 lives and how that's going to turn out. The more information that we know that we can avoid that. If you're an alcoholic, don't go to the bar, right? Number one, learn as much as you can. So number two, you can avoid potential situations. Maybe you don't want to cheat on your spouse. Well, don't go hanging out with other people of the opposite sex all the time. That's a friendly tip. Avoid potential situations because of what you learn. And three, ask God for help. Because, what did we say? Life happens, right? Sometimes you want to do what's right. Sometimes you have no idea what's going on. You can ask Him to learn, you can ask Him to avoid situations, and you can ask Him for help when you know better and you're going to do it anyway. You can ask God for help. Because learning as much as you can means ignorance is not bliss. You don't want to find out that you did something really horrible because you didn't know any better. Well, I didn't know the speed limit in the parking lot was only 10. It's not my fault that that kid jumped out in front of me. Can you imagine? You don't want that to happen. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. Ignorance is not bliss. And so more info, more experience increases your odds. Like I said, I am never again probably going to forget to put on the emergency brake and let my car go down the parking lot. You should learn from my experience. Don't do that. God will help you keep prepared more than you can on your own. Remember, Solomon forgot where his wisdom came from. You can, whatever you want. You can talk to God, you can pray to God, you can read His Word, and you have the Holy Spirit to help you. Now, it may sound all high and holy to you, but it is true. God knows about future dangers that you might encounter and can prepare you ahead of time for what's going on. There was a big funeral here, and if you were around here, you would have been amazed because over in that building, they had this memorial and a funeral, and there were probably 125 to 150 people in that building. There were cars parked all along the driveway. There was all these people. I'm in my house watching because I like to watch. And I see this, and I'm smart. I knew what was going to happen. They're letting their kids play outside, which I don't care. There's swing sets, there's whatever. They think the river's cool. Well, I see these two kids come out of the ministry center, out the back, along the deck. And there's a little girl, and there's a little boy. And they're going towards the river. And I see it. They're on the deck. And they walk out because kids don't just eat and then finish eating and then go outside. They're carrying their plates and everything, right? Whatever. So they walk out of the building. Little boy has a plate. Doesn't have food on it anymore, but he has the plate. Little girl has a pop can. I don't know if it's empty or not. She's holding a pop can. I said to myself, now I'm way better than I was because I would have ran out of the house and said, get off my lawn when I was younger. But I was like, I bet $1,000 that plate ends up in the river. Where do you think that plate ended up? Ended up in the river. As soon as he walked out the door, I'm like, oh, they got their stuff, and there's not even any food. I don't even know why they got, oh, that thing's ended up in the river. And I walked, and he went along the woods, or whatever, and he's hitting her, and she's, stop them, whatever, and going down, get to the edge, and they're walking, and the girl turns around to start walking back with her can, mind you, because she's a girl. She turns like this, and the boy's still facing the river and goes, walks up the hill. I'm not getting mad because I was a boy once too. It's just a plate. Well, this is what I'm telling you. If you think I'm amazing because I can predict that the boy's going to throw the plate in the river as soon as he walks out of that building with the plate, you think I am amazing. God is so much beyond that. of knowing what's already going to happen before it happens. And he can help prepare you. That's why you ask him. He can help you be wiser because he knows what's going to happen. Imagine having your best friend that already knows what's going to happen. He's like, oh, don't do that. Go this way. I'm not saying that it's that easy to understand and hear God, but that's basically what it is. He's going to prepare you for things in life that you don't even know you're going to need. And he's so much smarter and wiser than I am and can predict so many more things. But he's loving enough to let you do it anyway so that you have your own choice.
Some nights, all you wanna do is hide. 'Cause every time you look inside, you're face to face with